Real quick here before the vid, I'm streaming a Nier Automata blind playthrough on Twitch right after it goes live. This is going to be an incredible time, come check it out, linked below.
僕が本気で戦うしかないんだ。やめとけモブ。嫌な時はな。逃げたっていいんだよ。
It's not the hardest connection to make, but when I saw this scene in the final episode of Mob Psycho's first season, I instantly thought of Evangelion's own iconic scene. Mob Psycho presents a clarification for those doofuses who've been slandering my baby for a quarter of a century now. Gendo's command to Shinji to get in the robot is a cruel one that forms part of the foundation of Eva's social critique. But many frustrated audience members have made this demand of Shinji themselves. The adults in the Eva pilots' lives have largely failed them, and so it unfairly falls on their shoulders to bear the burden of saving the world that those adults nearly destroyed. Mob Psycho takes this one step further by directly asserting that this is nonsense, and that in a case like this you should be able to run away, and an adult should be able to take over. In this scene, the series rejects this paradigm where children are forced to go through great pains and dirty their consciences to protect themselves in a broken world. It isn't your job to stoically push through that. It's adults' job to protect the next generation from such burdens. Mob's being threatened with death by a bunch of broken adults raised by other broken adults, perpetuating that cycle. Now it's Mob's turn to break himself against these rocks, forced to become a killer to atone for those past sins. And Reagan says, "Like hell will I let that happen." If Mob had been forced to take on this task, the violence he'd have inflicted would have stained his psyche forever, and also done little good at all. Members of an organization whose view is that the powerful should rule would have been beaten by someone more powerful than them, and the broader organization would continue on unimpeded, its ideology validated if anything. Instead, Reagan put those members in their places, and in so doing totally deconstructed their guiding principles. A problem addressed by a child will most likely be taken on with a simple, childish solution. Those solutions can work for good, but they can't accomplish meaningful good usually. In this case, killing the violent Claw members in order to protect people who did nothing wrong would have been a moral outcome, a victory for the good guys. But it wouldn't have changed anything more broadly. Children have incredible potential and the capacity to do great things, and Mob Psycho readily acknowledges that, but so often that potential is wasted. So often they're prevented from coming into their own and capitalizing on that potential. That power just can't cause fundamental change until it's power guided by perspective. At multiple points, the Claw members are compared psychologically to children, and Mob could have turned out similarly to them, a stunted adult who never grew past childhood, if he hadn't had Reagan. Mob Psycho brings into laser focus the desperate need for adults to break this cycle of failing the next generation. The scars of Japan's generational divides are gaping canyons carved into its people's hearts by the cruel disillusion wrought by repeated broken promises. The children of the Second World War were promised the grandeur of a glorious empire, only to have the shit kicked out of them and be put in their place by the world's premier monstrous imperial power, who taught them how it's done. The children of the economic boom era were promised social revolution until, through a culmination of killing innocents, killing themselves, and most importantly a whole lot of CIA money funneled into their opposition, the leftist student movements of Japan fizzled out and the country was resigned by sheer force of aging population to conservative national government forevermore. The children of the lost decade were promised a forever skyrocketing economy at the least. Trading away all their protections to corporations to make way for their absurd growth had worked so far, right up until the market tanked, leaving nothing to fall back on. And the children of the post-lost decade void were promised that at least things would recover from there, the old economic boom and bust. when instead things just meandered towards the second decade most experts deemed to also be lost. Children who never got to see their fathers because they were leaving for work at 6 in the morning and leaving work at 10 in the night were told that they were doing important work, part of a great glorious economic enterprise, the noble salarymen, the beating heart at the center of it all. When the economy went into cardiac arrest, they were cast aside as if they were the offending heart, tossed in the operating room trash can to die, but really, they were never that important. They were more of an appendix, just sitting there, going about their routine while accomplishing little, the vestige of a responsibility that was once important, or is at least said to have been. Throughout so much of Japanese media, there is a heavy sense of betrayal by the previous generation, and specifically the men of that generation. After all, they were largely the ones who left their kids at home to go fight in a failed war or work in a failed economic system. It's present even in Pokemon, where the father of the player character was nowhere to be found in the first installment. Given the weight this issue holds, there's an incredible power to what Mob Psycho does here. Seeing trauma this deeply buried get dug up, autopsied, reflected upon, and then given a sense of resolution to, one that serves as a guide for how to begin the healing process and finally break away from repeating the same mistakes generation after generation, well, it's a profound moment. Series director Yuzuru Tachikawa said in an interview that there's the part where Mob's emotions begin to steer out of control and Reagan slaps him on the cheek, saying, "When things go south, it's okay to run away." I felt that without the flashback, we wouldn't be able to properly show that Mob decided it was okay to run away because Reagan told him he'd show him how to use his powers. I'm glad that it worked so well in the episode. This really gets to the heart of what's involved in fixing things. Reagan taking this one burden off Mob's shoulders wouldn't have done much more good than Mob beating those dudes up. The crucial element here is the years of nurturing, of guidance that he provided. This scene isn't a singular gesture of help from Reagan that fixes everything. It's a demonstration of the help he's been providing all this time.
みんなを守るためには僕がやらなきゃいけないんだ。今はそういう時なんだ。
兄さん。
なのに逃げてもいいって師匠は僕に言った。だから。
You want to yell at me about this video? Well, I'll be watching through it live with you and answering your questions at the end of my stream today, so come on through. As I said at the start, give it a look. I hiked through a rainstorm to the one GameStop in my state that had a copy of the original Nier to play that, and loved it, so I can't wait to finally get to Automata. It'll be a blast. If you can't make it today, I'll be streaming for like 6 hours every day starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time till I beat the game, so swing by sometime. And jump on into my Discord server to vote on what games I play in the future, along with lots of other cool stuff. You can support my work with the Ko-fi link or through Patreon, and a huge thank you goes out to Meownarchy, Joel Casas, Okami Otaku, Psyker, Jonathan Conley, Tyler Monk, Teenshow37, Elaine Aldfelt, David McCown, Smokeweed Sephiroth 420, and everyone who's helping to support me on there already. Alright, now get out of here and onto that Twitch page. See ya.